We heard the story of Ezekiel and the dry bones. And so as we go into today's message, let's keep that particular scripture in our minds as we think about the ways that we can give up our lives. On November 8th at 6:46 a.m., the first call was heard on the CAL FIRE's radio channel. A fire was burning near Poe Dam along the Feather River in Northern California. The firefighter who spotted the blaze said it was small, about 10 acres, but with wind gusts topping out at 50 miles per hour. It didn't take long for that fire to grow. In just a few hours, the camp fire, named for Camp Creek Road, where the fire originated, had consumed thousands of acres. By 8 a.m., some residents said they could hear the metallic clang of propane tanks exploding in Paradise, California, about 10 miles away from where the fire started. By 9 a.m., the first residents began to evacuate, and within 8 hours, the entire town of Paradise was all but wiped off the face of the earth. By some accounts, the fire spread so fast that it was consumed an area the size of a football field every minute. Many of the town's 27,000 residents fled with nothing more than a change of clothes. A few had just enough time to grab important documents and keepsakes, but many of the residents there lost everything, even their lives. It was the most destructive and deadliest wildfire in California's history, with more than 153,000 acres burned, nearly 18,800 structures destroyed, including 9,879 houses, 3,695 mobile homes, almost 90% of the homes in Paradise. And of course, the worst statistic of all, 85 people lost their lives, many of them dying in their own homes because they simply didn't have time to get out. In the aftermath of the fire, residents described the town as apocalyptic, a war zone, complete and total devastation. And you know, based on the pictures that I saw this week on the internet, I have to agree with their assessment. All that is left are charred remains of a town whose only desire was to live up to its name, Paradise. You know, the pictures of Paradise after the fire made me think of Ezekiel's vision of the dry bones. I imagine that the valley was like a desert, parched and cracked, full of dry bones, old bones, dead bones. Not a very pretty place. But that was the point. God wanted Ezekiel to see and experience the condition of the hearts of God's people who were in exile, signified by the bones. Son of man, these bones represent the people of Israel. They are saying, we have become old, dry bones. All hope is gone. We're done, they were saying. We're spent. And God asks Ezekiel, can these bones live again? And like many of us, I'm sure if God were to ask us a similar question, Ezekiel, I picture him shrugging his shoulders and saying, God, only you know the answer to that. I don't know if you know much about Ezekiel, but he was a prophet born shortly before the Babylonian exile. He was called by God in his 30th year, 5 years after the Israelites were forced to leave their homeland, Jerusalem. He and his wife were taken into exile and forced to live in Babylon, along with the king and others who were considered the cream of the crop. It was in that context, while in captivity, that Ezekiel prophesied to God's people, urging them to turn back toward God. For 22 years, Ezekiel preached to a people who were depressed and without hope, who were frustrated and angry, and who were being forced out of their homes. They were dead and tired, like the valley of dry bones. They longed to return to Jerusalem, to their home, but were unwilling to change their ways. And Ezekiel understood how they felt, because he too was also frustrated and angry. He was tired of preaching to a people for 22 years to folks who would not listen to him. He was tired of telling them what to do one thing, and then watching them do the complete opposite. So Ezekiel and the Israelites were experiencing the same emotions. They were done. They were spent. They felt dead. You know, I bet many of us have felt that way, haven't we? Like we're right in the middle of the valley of dry bones. Maybe you're there right now. Maybe there's discontent in your marriage, or you're facing divorce. Maybe someone you love recently died, or someone you care very deeply for is no longer a part of your life. Maybe you're facing a life-threatening illness, or a difficult surgery, or you have chronic pain for which it seems you will never recover. Maybe you're overwhelmed with hopelessness and nothing makes sense anymore. Maybe you've asked yourself, will I ever feel normal again? Will my life ever be the same? I know I've asked myself those questions. And it's in times like that, when all hope is gone, that's when we need God the most, right? And yet, too often, that's when we turn away from God. Just like the Israelites who were living in Babylon. We think God is to blame for our troubling situations, even though in our heads we probably know that isn't true. And it's times like these when, like Ezekiel, we are filled with doubt and despair. God asks us, quite frankly, can these bones live again? And like Ezekiel, we shrug our shoulders and say, God, only you know the answer to that. When we find ourselves in the valley of dry bones, it's hard to believe that God can breathe new life into us, into our tired and lifeless and devastated bodies. That's when we need to remember this story. We need to remember the story of Ezekiel and his vision of the valley of dry bones. Right before his eyes, Ezekiel watches as God brings the bones back together and covers them with muscles and tendons and flesh. He sees God breathe new life into the bones and watches them come back to life. And that, my friends, is the first message, the first important message that we must take away from this story. It's a message of hope. That no matter how bad things are, no matter how bad things might seem, no matter how bad we perceive it to be, our relationship with God gives us hope for a better life. It gives us hope that things can and will get better. When we trust in God and we give up our old lives, our old ways of doing things, When we trust in God and give up those things, then our lives feel dried up and dead. God will breathe into us a new life full of promise, just as God breathed new life into Jesus' lifeless body on the day of resurrection. God creates life from death. God makes something beautiful out of our despair. God gives us hope where there once was no hope. God promises a new life. And that promise of new life is stronger than anything else that we are going through. It can overcome the darkness and can give us a new beginning. And you know, that's what they're seeing in Paradise, California right now. Since the campfire all but wiped the city of Paradise off the map, some incredible things have happened by the grace of God. On November 25th, when the fire was 100% contained, there was little hope that Paradise could be reborn. But by December 17th, just 3 weeks later, the post office reopened. And on January 23rd, the town hall reopened. And by January 10th, probably the most important of all, Starbucks reopened. And just last week, on March 27th, the first rebuilding permit was issued to a family whose home was completely destroyed in the fire. What was once a valley of dead, dry bones is a town filled with new life and new breath. So the first thing we need to hear from the story of Ezekiel's vision is that no matter how bad things are, God can breathe new life into these bones. Therefore, we must not give up hope. Amen? Amen. But there's a second message that we also need to hear from this story. At the beginning of his vision, God asks Ezekiel, can these bones live? And you already heard what Ezekiel said, right? Oh God, only you know the answer to that. Now, I bet Ezekiel thought he was off the hook, right? Well, I know I would have, but God certainly had a different idea. Speak to the bones, God says to Ezekiel. Tell them I will make them live again. I will bring them back to their homeland, Jerusalem. God invited, actually God demanded that Ezekiel become a partner with God, that he work to bring new life to God's people. He brings that message. And you know, friends, God also invites us. No, God demands that we do the same for those around us who are in despair. God calls us to be life breathers and share God's message of hope with those who have no hope. That no matter how bad things may seem, God will bring them out of the despair and the depths in which they find themselves. God calls each of us to be an Ezekiel for someone else. To tell the dry bones among us that they can live again. There was a school system in a large city that had a program to help children keep up with their schoolwork while they were patients in one of the city's hospitals. Well, one day a teacher who was assigned to the program took a call asking her to visit a certain child. She took the child's name and spoke briefly to the child's regular teacher, who told her, we're studying nouns and adverbs in his class right now, and I'd be grateful if you could help him so he doesn't get too far behind. What his regular teacher did not tell the visiting teacher was that the boy had been badly burned and was in a great deal of pain. And so when the visiting teacher entered his room, she was not only stunned by his condition, she was so taken aback that she had a hard time even communicating with him. She stammered and she stuttered all through her introduction with the boy. And she told him, "I've been sent by the school to help you keep up with your class. They are studying nouns and adverbs." When the visiting teacher left, she felt like she really hadn't accomplished much. But the next day when she arrived, the boy's nurse asked the visiting teacher, "What did you do to that boy?" Thinking she must have done something wrong, she started to apologize, and then the nurse said, No, you don't understand. We have been so worried about that little boy. But ever since your visit yesterday, his attitude has totally changed. He is fighting back and responding to his treatment. It's as if he has decided to live. 2 weeks later, the boy explained that he had given up all hope that his life would continue. Until that visiting teacher arrived, he said to those who were asking him about it, "They wouldn't send a teacher to work with me on nouns and adverbs if I was dying," right? Friends, we are called to be Ezekiel. Speak a prophetic message to the bones. Say, "Dry bones, listen to the word of the Lord. Look, I will breathe new life in you, and you will live again." Amen?
Amen.
Amen.